Christians. I presided over a live session where I was speaking against this indifference that people have to the church. In other words, the indifference that so many Christians have about not needing to go to a church and that there's no need to be a part of a structured, organized church where we fellowship and where we assemble together and worship together. In that very live, it appeared that I had offended one woman. Names don't matter. But I apparently offended a woman without realizing that I was doing so. I was accused of mocking her, which certainly was not my goal. Nonetheless, a friend of hers reached out to me to give me a subtle, gentle rebuke regarding it, to which I responded to this mediator by telling her, please apologize on my behalf to the person you are representing. And so I did, and I meant it, and I was genuine, and I hope that the offended party is forgiving. But it was a small thing. It was about my stance versus her stance on the indifference to church assembly and corporate worship. So here's the problem. It appears that the person offended and the person who was defending the offended are those who are advocates of the lack of a need to be part of a church body. But what I wanted to point out to all of you, because my issue is not about them or that situation. I believe that's been resolved. But my issue is this. This event proved the argument I was making about us should not have an indifference to corporate worship in church and with churches. And I'll tell you the reason why. If you look at these verses here that I have on screen, you have the words of Christ himself. He is telling us that when we have a dispute, like in the case that I described up to this point, when we have a dispute, we are to take it to each other. That wasn't done. The person who was offended wasn't the one who came to me, but that's okay. It was resolved, as I said. But that person should have come to me, and I would have extended the olive branch and admitted the fault and sought her forgiveness, which I believe I have, but I don't know. But anyway, here's the point. Christ goes on to say that if the person who was doing the offending was not seeking forgiveness or reformation, that the persons involved were to take the issue, to take up the matter to the church. If there's no church, what is the process? In the scenario that I described, two things were wrong. The one person didn't bring it to me, which Christ describes in these verses should be done. That wasn't done. The other thing is that if I had been against the accusation, or if I opposed the accusation, then that person was supposed to take it to the church. So what I'm saying is this. The scenario that I experienced is the exact reason why we need to have the church. Some of the great theologians of the past have identified church order or the indifference to the church and the indifference to church order would be a primary problem causing the downfall of the church and the introduction of severe apostasy. Church discipline. The lack of church discipline would be the thing that would be one of the major aspects which would increase apostasy in the church. Now, granted, the issue that was had with me with these ladies was on this platform. But what I'm saying is this happened outwardly in this setting, but this is what goes on this is what goes on with people all the time. And outside the context of a church, there is no real way to handle it other than the way you see fit, not the way God has ordained should be the way it's done. So I hope I'm explaining this in a way that makes it palatable for people. But the issue is this: these are the very reasons why we should embrace the church and its order the way God has ordained for us to do so. Be provoked and be persuaded.